Welcome to week 11. Come on. Who's ready for week 11? Well, we can same clothes. Yeah, it's weird how we always wear the same clothes for 2 weeks in a row.
So odd.
Yeah, but that's when Holly does the laundry. All right, Proverbs 29:17 says this, as we're still in our flow chart. But watch this. Discipline your children, and they will give you peace. How many people know an undisciplined child gives you no peace? You get a teenager that's undisciplined, I've met with those parents. There's no peace in their life whatsoever. But a disciplined child will give you peace, and they will bring you delights, the delights you desire. That's it. As we're kind of walking into the season as our children get older, our children are delights. They're enjoyable. This is what we have and we want to have in your future, where your children, when you think about time and them coming around, that it gives you peace, and it gives you a smile, and it gives you joy.
Can I add that also that trickles down to your grandkids? Because I have kids that are now raising kids, and my grandchildren are a joy.
Olive brings me peace.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, and she's only 2.
She worked Grandpa last night a little bit because it was bedtime. So she's supposed to go to bed at 7:30,
good.
and then Lakin and Camille showed up at 9, and she was up watching a show with Grandpa.
Well,
And I'm Grandpa. So here's the thing. I just go to her. We're watching a show at 7:30. I go, hey, you want to go to bed? And she just put her little shoulder on me. She goes, no, I'm going to watch a show with you. And I went, good. That's what we're doing.
I got home a little bit later. I said, why is Olive still awake? They're going to be coming in, and they're going to be annoyed that you've still got her up. He said, I'm not putting her down.
I go, they can do that. Stop, Grandpa.
So now we might have to train up a grandparent later. I don't know.
Oh, we had a good night. All right, remember what discipline is. Discipline is about changing direction. All right, so now we're going to go into, this is the meat. This is the changing the direction the next 2 weeks. As we go into B3, write in B3 in your flow chart, write correction. Got to correct it. We have to make sure that we bring a correction or discipline, in a sense, to our children's life. And it's important that you realize this. There's 2 things, and this is vital. So write down in B4, childishness, and in B5, foolishness. Childishness and foolishness. This is one of the key parts of discipline, that if you mess this one up, it's a big no-no, and you make a big mess in your life. To understand that what our kids do sometimes is just childishness, and sometimes it is foolishness. And so we got to make sure that we treat the 2 totally differently, and as the flow chart goes through, we're able to identify the difference, right? It's childishness is just that. They're child. Children are going to make mistakes. Right? They're going to do things, it's just going to happen, right? But then there are times when a child does something that is foolish, right? It's something foolish in nature. It was going against what they knew they should do, right? I remember I was out and I was working on the car, on my lawnmower, and Peyton was like 3 years old at the time, and I was trying to get the spark plug out, and thing was it bent in the way, and so I had a hammer, and I was getting it out of the way, and Peyton was there helping Dad out, and he goes, "What you doing, Dad?" I go, "Fixing the lawnmower," right? And I'm hitting it, and I'm fixing it. I put the hammer down, right? I'm doing something, and about 20 seconds later, all of a sudden I hear bam, bam, bam on my Hummer, and I go, "Peyton, what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm fixing your Hummer." No, you're not fixing my Hummer. How many people know that that's childishness? Now, if I said, "Stop hitting my Hummer," and he just kept hitting it, how many people know now we've gone into foolishness? That's just, foolishness is rebellion. Childishness is just that. It's just kids do things, they make mistakes, they make wrong decisions, and we have to make sure that we treat them differently, that we look at the intent of the heart.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's really what's going on the inside. You look at it and you go, no, that's not rebellion. That's just a mistake the child made, so I have to deal with that differently. When we were, me and Jason, I think we were like 10 and 7, we were in the backyard, we got my dad's golf clubs, and we just thought it'd be cool to hit golf balls in the backyard. And we had a really small backyard, and so we were just shooting them over the fence, right? Just shooting them. And then Jason hit one, and it just went right into the window right next to my mom, landed in her coffee cup. Right? It wasn't like it was a deal, but it wasn't like we were just being kids. We didn't even think of it. We just didn't know. My dad didn't tell us not to. My point was, Dad, you never told us not to golf out back. He's like, well, I shouldn't have to tell you that, but that's fine, right? And so we were just being kids, and we'll get to kind of our consequences as we go through this. But a kid spills milk. Childishness, right? They're walking to the table, they spill the milk. They spill the milk in the family room.
Yes.
but they know that we don't bring drinks in the family room.
Yes.
That would be foolishness, right? The problem wasn't spilling the milk. I get that. Things happen. We all spill milk once in a while. But we know that we don't get to take drinks into the family room, so now we've entered into the foolishness. And so it's very important that we're able to look at the intent of the heart. Childishness is just that, it's a mistake. Foolishness is rebellion or willfully going against kind of what us as parents want the child to do. If you discipline a foolish child as if they made childish mistakes, you will raise a fool. If you discipline a kid who does something childish as if it was foolish, they will grow up and resent and hate you. So it's very important that we understand the difference and that we treat both of those in very different ways. So let's say that you went through and you went, I think this is childishness. I think this is a mistake. So you write in C1. It's childish. You're like, I think this is childish, right? So you give them a warning, right? You give them the why, right? Your kid spills the milk, right? Walking to the table, and you're like, well, I know it. You're hurrying, but we got to take our time, right? You hold it with two hands. Be careful. Watch what you're going, right? It was right. You have right. Let's say you come home and you're like, hey kids, we're gonna go out to eat, and the kids get so excited they leave the video games out. They don't turn the television off, the games out. And they come up and we all go. We come back home and I'm like, hey, you guys know that you were supposed to put your video. You left it out. That's not, you're supposed to turn the TV off, right? And so it was childishness, all right? And I give them a warning, right? The first time, right? This is a warning. Hey, guys, make sure we turn this off. But let's say that it happens 2 nights later. Well, now we're kind of embarking on a different avenue that we may have to raise up. It's still childishness. I get it that you caught up in the moment, you got excited, but we didn't change direction just a couple nights later. All right, so C2 is related consequences. Related consequences. These are consequences that make sense. It was childishness, but there still sometimes needs to be a direction change. I can't raise a child that just keeps making mistakes and mistakes on their job. They just keep making the same mistake in their marriage over and over again. I can't raise children like that. I understand it's an accident. It was an oops, right? You keep dropping your cell phone over and over again. Dad's got to have to keep buying you a new cell phone or fixing the one that you have. It costs money. So we have to make sure that we're getting you to be mindful and that we're getting you not to make mistakes. So C3, write in property. So these are consequences that make sense. Underneath that it could be property, right? So it's 2 nights later, they leave the video games out. So you come home and you go, yeah, so we're not going to play video games tonight. We're going to put it all away. If you guys can't remember, then we lose video games. It's just, I'm sorry about that, but that's just the way that it is next time. So it's something to help them remember on the next time. Like I said, they keep breaking their phone. Right? You just keep breaking your phone, and you're not being careful with it, and it keeps falling out. You're just not mindful of it. So Dad got you a flip phone. This is awesome. You're going to love this thing because you can't handle a nice iPhone. So now you got a $30 flip phone. Drop it, throw it out the window. I don't care. Do whatever you want with it, right? Now, when I feel like you can handle this phone, then Dad will bring you back a nice phone back into your world, but you can't handle the responsibility of that phone. And so it has to be something that makes sense. C4 is privilege. Might just take away the privilege, right? You have a kid that keeps spilling their drink every time at dinner, right? It's an accident. I get that. But you're not being mindful. You're not thinking. Your mind is somewhere else. I get that. So guess what? You get now a sippy cup at the dinner table. All the big kids, I know you're 12, but I'm sorry, you can't handle a regular cup. So now you have a sippy cup, and all the family makes fun of you and your sippy cup until you can handle not tipping that over for maybe a week, and then we'll move you back on into a big boy cup, right? So it's a privilege. It's a privilege to have a cup without a top on it. That's a privilege. And you can't handle that privilege, so I have to make sure, because once again, I'm not going to raise up a child who doesn't learn from their mistakes, isn't growing in their mistakes, and keeps making mistakes as adults. Those are annoying adults, and so we're not going to raise that, right? So we take away, I lost my privilege last night.
I was just going to say, you have a wrong heading on this one.
I lost it.
You have olive and Fruity Pebbles.
Yes.
You guys can just get a picture in your mind, 2-year-old and Fruity Pebbles. I come home. But this isn't olive and Fruity Pebbles. This should say
I
Scott
lost my
and Fruity
privilege.
Pebbles
I
with
know.
olive.
I lost Fruity Pebbles forever, just so you all know in this house.
You did.
I didn't know if you guys knew.
I think I went and threw them away.
I lost the Fruity Pebbles because Olive loves the Fruity Pebbles, so I get a little thing, and I put little Fruity Pebbles in there, and then we go watch Minions up on the TV, and then I guess Olive, I don't know, when I'm not looking, she just throws Fruity
like
Pebbles all over
confetti?
the place.
No, but the little thing is an open dish. Like, it's not like he's all like, I gave her a little thing. The little thing is just like an open Tupperware thing that doesn't have a lid. It doesn't have,
She wasn't
and
old.
it's got Fruity Pebbles just dumped inside it.
Well, not anymore. They're on the couch.
Exactly.
She informed me last night I lost my privilege.
There's no more Fruity Pebble privileges.
No more Fruity Pebbles for us. And that's the same thing, right? I know that happened with Peyton. Peyton was like, I don't know, 3 years old, had a muffin. Hey, can I eat it while we're watching the show? Bring it in there. And then when he got done, it was like a muffin hurricane hit. Like there's muffin everywhere. It's fine. It's a mistake. It wasn't his fault, right? He's just not old enough to bring a muffin into the family room. We have to eat the muffin in the kitchen, over the table, over a tarp probably. Like we have to do the muffin differently.
Oh, come on. It was you.
And probably so you learned it from his father.
Whatever.
I lost
He was the
muffins on that day.
Yeah, he lost the muffin
I'm the
privilege
muffin
anywhere.
man. Dang it. See, if I lose stuff all the time. All right, C5, personal responsibility. So it was a mistake, but we still raise up children that are responsible, right? They own their mistakes. We want to raise adults that way. So once again, we have to do that when they're children. Me and Jason hit a golf ball through the window. Got it. But I was like, yeah, it was a mistake. I got it. But you're paying for the window.
Right.
It's $30, which doesn't seem like a lot now. But when you only make $2 a week allowance, that's a lot of money, right? That was 8 weeks of no allowance to pay for that window, which I still remember some 50 years later or 40 years later, I still remember today. It made an impact in my life. And that's the same thing for our kids. We have to teach our children to be responsible. When they do something, right, that there's something that they have to pay for. You play with a friend's toy, and you broke the toy. And they're like, well, it was already kind of broken. Well, sorry. I know it was an accident, but now you're going to have to pay for that. You have to do some extra chores, come up there. But we buy them a new toy. Well, why did they get a new toy? It was an old toy. Because that's life. That's what Andersons do, right? Well, if we break something, we have to be responsible for that. This is how we raise our kids. And we make sure that we don't trade in a lesson of responsibility for a few dollars in our pocket. I had pulled out the parking lot, and some young girls pulled, and they literally just backed right smack that just in me, just backed up in me. I was right. And so I just felt like in my spirit, I'm like, I better record. So I got my phone, I recorded, come up, and the girl's like, oh my God, we weren't watching. I am so sorry. I apologize. I just backed up without looking. I'm so sorry. I got the information, right? So then I contact the parents, and the parents go, it was your fault. And I go, no, here, maybe the kid told you that. Here's the recording. Let me tell you. And so they go, I don't believe the recording. What do you mean you don't believe the recording? That was your child said that. How do you not believe the recording? Right? And so, right, it goes to insurance, and so each insurance, my insurance and their insurance both do their half, and I go, that's very sad that you didn't teach your children responsibility. We both know that your daughters are lying, because that's what teenagers do. We all know that. We had a recording of it. Your child did something wrong, and you decided to save a few dollars rather than teach them responsibility. I would rather teach my child responsibility, because a child like that is going to grow up to an irresponsible child who will never own their own mistakes in their life. So it's important that we make them take responsibilities. Proverbs 22:15, a child's heart is filled with foolishness, but physical discipline will drive it far away. Biblical. I'm just giving you the Bible here. Physical discipline, which we're going to talk about that now in this part and in the next part of now bringing a little bit more correction into their life so that I don't raise a fool. Now, it's important that we realize when we look at foolishness of our children that it's easy to see the outward foolishness. Like there's a kid, like if you have multiple kids, you'll have a kid that maybe outwardly, like it's easy to see. They slam the door, they throw a fit, they throw a tantrum. Like you're like, it's right there, I can see it. It's so easy, right, to see it. But what parents will miss out on is what we call sneaky rebellion. And sneaky rebellion is the rebellion where you have these parents who are like, they were so good, and then they got into junior high, and everything exploded. And what they didn't realize is you thought they were good. You just ignored the sneaky rebellion that was there that manifested itself when they became teenagers. And you never dealt with the sneaky. And what's a sneaky rebellion? That's the roll of the eyes. just a little roll of the eyes, a little mumbling as they walk away. It's the kid that just pouts and, kind of, right, is put off by you, right, for a few days, a week, or whatever else, where they're just mad. They're just saying, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. You know they're not fine. Everybody knows they're not fine, right? Are you kidding me? I put a roof over your head, right? I work 50, 60 hours a week so that you can eat, so you have Nike tennis shoes and you're walking around this house and you somehow feel like you have a right to be mad at me? Not in my house. You don't get to be mad at Dad. I'm sorry. You made a mistake. A wise person heeds correction and grows from it, but a fool is the one that's angered by it. So I'll give you a little bit of time, but you better buck up real fast and real quick, because in my home, you don't get to be mad at Dad, because that's not even biblical. By the time the sun goes down, everybody is happy and forgiven, and we move on in our lives. And so it's very important that you realize and you look at it for the sneakiness. The sneaky rebellion is the one that really will bite you in the teenage years.
Well, and little guys, like your little 2-year-old, 3-year-olds, the 4-year-olds, this is, I think we shared one of the stories in one of the other sessions where, you say, hey, I want you to eat in the kitchen. I don't want you to eat in the living room. And we had one that would put just the tip of his toes over the carpet into the living room. And is that a huge deal? No, it's not. Technically, I guess the majority of his body in person was still in the kitchen. So, technically it probably wasn't going to make a big old mess. But the concept is that he was reserving that 10% for himself. And, if left untouched and not like, hey, I see your toes. I know what you're doing.
What are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny, and like behind the scenes, I'm laughing like, yeah, he thinks he's got one over on me. But and not to make a big old massive deal out of it, but just to be mindful of it, because is there a capability, if they're reserving that 10% for themselves, is that child the one that then becomes the teenager that can roll their eyes at you and you let them? Is that the teenager then that is, smiley to your face, but, sneaking out or talking bad, or like Scott said, pouting? I think it's really important to know that some of these, they grow into bigger issues. They grow into bigger situations.
Well, you don't want to raise a kid who becomes a spouse that doesn't talk to their husband or wife for a week because they're upset at him. That's not what we do. We don't raise that. That's not biblical. That's not going to give them a great life. And so if you're going to do it to me, then it's going to compound. It's going to be bigger in life. All right, foolish filter. This is your great friend. To figure out what to do, this is one of the big ones. You're going to take things that they do, and you're going to go through the foolish filter, and when it comes out, it's going to give you one of 3 different avenues to go. So in the foolish filter, write in number 1, age of the child. This is going to be a big one. So how do I respond to this? Age of the child is a big one, right? A 3-year-old does something, right, and a 10-year-old does something, the same thing. They're 2 totally different things, and so I have to make sure that I take the age of the child into consideration. Number 2 is the frequency. Right? One kid has a bad attitude, but it's the first time ever. Like, the kid doesn't have a bad attitude ever. Well, maybe something's going on in their life. Maybe something's happened in school. Maybe there's a bully. Maybe there's, right, some kid maybe got, who knows? You don't know. So I have to make sure that I take the frequency. I don't treat the first time like the kid that's had a bad attitude 5 times this week. I have to treat those very differently so that I don't exasperate my child. So I have to take the frequency. The context is a big one, so we don't become legalistic. An 8-year-old lies about wetting the bed because they're embarrassed. That's a lie. I get that. But that's way different than an 8-year-old that lies about hitting their sister. They're lies, right? But I have to treat them very, very much differently because of the context of why they were lying. Number 4 is overall good kid. Get a kid that's just a great kid, right? Overall, great kid. And they come home with a D. Okay, what's going on here? I'll treat that different than the kid that got C's and D's on the last 3 report cards. That's different, right? So what's going on here? All right, let's go down to the school. Let's figure out what's going on. Is there a problem with a teacher? So what things can I do? I handle that way differently based on the overall characteristics of the child, because you'll have maybe a child that's going through a season of rebellion. And so I'm going to deal with that differently than a child that has one spout of rebellion in their life. Number 5. Make sure the punishment fits the crime. So as we're going into the discipline and the punishment, we got to make sure that punishment has value. It really does. And so what they do has to kind of fit, right? So a kid hits their sister, and it's 10-minute time out in the room. But later that day, they break a vase that you loved, and so it was a spanking. So breaking the vase was more valuable than hitting my sister, and everything got out of whack there. And so we got to make sure that we are putting things in a proper perspective and a proper value by going through this thing. Make sure that you're not over-punishing, but making sure that you're trying to find a way to have kryptonite in their life. Number 6 is a reasonable time frame. I put this in here because we dealt with where you're grounded for a year. Well, that's dumb. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Nobody wants to be grounded. It's not a prison sentence, right? We just want to change direction. You don't have to ground. Now, you can say, hey, until you get your grades up, we're removing this from your life. I get that because there's an end goal. They get their grades up in 2-3 weeks. They can get their grades up maybe in a week if they get all their homework in. And we'll talk more about that, but make sure that it's reasonable, right? Well, when your dad gets home, you're going to be in trouble, but it's 8 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't get home till 7 o'clock at night. That's an unreasonable time frame for them to wait for. You may want to get them on the phone. You may want to deal with it yourself. There's a time frame. We had some friends years ago who were over, and they're like, yeah, so-and-so, yeah, she's going to get a spanking. I'm like, okay. She's like, yeah, it's been a couple weeks she's been waiting for it. I just don't feel it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what are we doing? Like the kids, is today the day? Is tomorrow the day? I don't know. I'm just waiting for it to come. It's just a horrible thing. So we make sure that we discipline now, if we can, fast, quick, get it right. We want to change direction as fast as we can, making sure that it's a reasonable time frame. All right, so you went through the filter. Now you're going to come to one of 3 places, right? You're going to go through it all the way, and you're going to come out, and you're going to go, well, I think this deserves, number 1, a warning. Put warning in there. There's times there's rebellion or something they know they shouldn't do, and you're going to navigate all the way through it, and you're like, this is a warning. Baylor, we were out at a restaurant. He may have been 10, 12 years old. And he knows how to act in a restaurant at this age. There was a bunch of other kids over there at the table, and all of a sudden, in the middle of mi amigos, Baylor lets out a belch, like, bah! And I'm like, and there's parent, and I'm like, train up a parent works great. I'm like, what are we doing? Come here, son. What are you doing? Right? I get it. There's kids over there. He's being ha. He's got his dad in him. Yeah, look at me, right? So, I go through the filter. I'm like, all right, I get it, right? This is right. And so I go, stop it. What do we do? We know we don't belch in front of people. Come on, make daddy proud, right? And so he's like, pre-warning, you didn't say no belching. No, I didn't have to. Peeing on the floor and belching, that's just a given. We don't do either one of those ever. So you may come out with a warning. The kids, right? You said, hey, you told your kid, hey, no running around the pool, right? And they're right, and then a few minutes go by. There's all the other kids are running, and they're running, and you're like, hey, come here. I get it, right? It's rebellious, but it's kind of a little bit, right? Get over here. Remember, Dad said no running. I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want you to slip, and I don't want you to fall. And so you come out of the filter, and you come out with, I'm just going to give them a warning. Number 2 is warning and removal. This is a big one. Sometimes you'll come up with it, and it needs to be a removal. So big one, Lakin's here, so I'll talk, right? Playing a video game, and you can tell when a kid's getting fired up. He's getting frustrated. He's getting mad. The Bible says, lead me not into temptation. Sometimes you want to, before you have to get into like discipline, sometimes it's best just to remove the child from the activity. He's getting frustrated, like, Lakin, pause the game. What? I can tell you're getting frustrated. Pause the game, right? And I'm teaching them also in life, things are frustrating. Sometimes you just need to walk away, gather a breath, gather yourself up, take a couple breaths, and then go back to it. So before it becomes a problem, right, I remove them. Kids are running around the pool again. Oh my gosh, get over here. And you go, hey, you're going to sit next to Dad for about 5 minutes or so. Just need you to, right? You're not able to handle the responsibility with the other kids here. I don't want this to get crazy, son. I really don't. I don't want to go to the next level of discipline. So I'm removing you because you're not able to handle the responsibility of that. And so we're looking at those moments of correction. And like I said, when we get to the pain part, which is the next part next week, we're doing everything that we can to not get to the pain part. Now, pain is just not spanking. That's like a 1% of it. Pain is removing stuff. Pain is, right? There's a lot of different ways to bring pain into somebody's life without a spanking. Yeah. It's just this little. It's a little. It's our last resort that we'll get to, and we'll talk about that next week. But a majority of it, as we're talking into correction, we will get into next week as we go into number 3, will be next week when we talk about how to bring a little bit of pain one way or another into our children's life so that we may change their direction. If you learned anything at all, give the Lord a hand clap.